Okay, hello everyone. My name is Paulo, and I'm joined today with.
Nathan Gomez, welcome back.
Welcome to our second podcast, and today's topic is going to be enlightenment.
And wisdom.
Yes, so kind of a mixture of Nathan's point of view on enlightenment and wisdom, and my own personal point of view. So I think this talk is going to be quite interesting because we have similar views on enlightenment and wisdom, but we also differentiate quite a bit. So I think I'm gonna let Nathan start with what he believes to be enlightenment. So and then I can give my contrast or my opinion, and then we can just discuss from there.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, we both think. I think I will start with what I think are the similarities, and then expand a little bit further in what I see, what the Bible, what scriptures say, and then I will point out a little bit what are the differences, what are the discrepancies where we diverge a little bit. And so I think what we both agree on is that enlightenment, or wisdom as I would call it, is something that you have to pursue, is something that you it's not it's not something that just comes to you. You focus on it, you meditate, or you study it, and it comes with time. That's why generally old people are considered wiser than youngers.
Yep.
And then an enlightened or wise person is someone that generally does better in life. It's someone who uses his brain rather than just goes with who
Wouldn't react necessarily so much, but would take into account his
exactly who has a better
experience.
perspective and more experience, a better understanding of what exactly is going on, and can hence make a better judgment of what a situation is right now. And exactly. And I mean, for both of us also, enlightenment or wisdom is comes from a certain set of humility. So it's a recognition that that we are not there.
No.
We're both or like a wise person will, for one, know that certain things are certain and certain things this person can rely on, but secondly will also not reject the opinion of others, but listen and also recognize that one person alone has a pretty limited perspective on a certain topic.
Yeah.
And the same. And now when I go to scriptures, I want to start with probably the most iconic verse where it talks about wisdom in the Bible. It says it in Proverbs 1 verse 7, the first part, and it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge," or of wisdom, as some Bible translations have it. And basically what this verse says is that recognizing that we are not in control of the universe, that we are not the ones who set the rules, not the ones who also stand in control of everything. When we get to this realization, we can start to truly understand and humiliate ourselves in order to learn about what true wisdom is and what how the universe works. I mean, that this is kind of we're still similar or on the same page in that point. However, what we differentiate on in this point is that Paulo believes that we are part of the universe and we are the universe experiencing itself. Hence, in a way, in some way, we are the ones who created and who define the rules. For me, I find it actually.
I wouldn't say we necessarily define the rules, but that it's kind of like, I give you this example of you told me about this. I don't know if it was a story in the Bible where they give the kids the tablets to write cursive, and so they give them the tablets to just learn how to write letters. They start writing the letters, and then after they learn how to write the letters, they take it away and they just practice on paper, and then they can use the letters to, I guess, create phrases and stuff. If that's my understanding. Yeah. So the way I see humans is we come into this world and we don't know how we came to be. So we just learn the rules. Then we start playing by the rules, and then we realize that we can create our own rules and we can adapt them and bend them to our time for us to make it a better society. That still doesn't mean that there are things which we cannot control. I mean, of course, there are things we cannot control. We cannot control gravity. We cannot control nature. These are things which, at least for now, that are out of our domain. And maybe as this life form might not be something that we can't necessarily control, which is completely okay as well. And when it talks to in the proverb that, one gains or starts getting knowledge or wisdom when he fears the Lord, I find that quite interesting, because you were talking about how there's just things that we do not know, things which we don't understand. And at least with Zen, for example, and just Buddhism in general, a lot of the monks, when they actually become sort of enlightened, is that they get to a point when they really ask themselves, like, okay, what is it that I want? How is it that I achieve this? And they come to a realization that I don't know. And it's that I don't know that gets the wisdom. Because it's like you said, by not knowing everything, because we cannot possibly know everything, we're wiser because we're able to, in a sense, be open for new possibilities. We're able to respect others, and we're able to live a more harmonious life. So it's kind of like we have to get to a point where we realize that there's so much we can know. There are things which they're out of our control. I don't want to, I do believe that we have a great part in the type of life that we live, and we can make a better living. But by doing that, we have to relinquish control to the universe. And by relinquishing control, I mean by allowing others to find their own knowledge, by allowing others to do the things that they love to do, and not trying to control all of them. That's where I believe wisdom lies, is in the ability to trust others to do their part, just as you would like them to do your part. So, because, unfortunately, if you try to control a person, or if you really try to teach a person, like, you should be doing this, they're not going to like it. They're not going to learn from it.
No.
So you're just wasting your energy, and you're wasting their energy. So we have to trust and just relinquish control. And the more you relinquish control, the more control you have, in a sense. Because you liberate yourself from all those tensions, of those negative thinking. And it's like, okay, show me what you can do, essentially. So it's important to do that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that as well. It's true wisdom is something applicable. It's something, not just knowledge about something. It is something practical. Yeah. It is basically a way of living.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think it's also important to differentiate between knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
Like this is something that I've kind of struggled with along my life, is I've been able to observe the universe quite well and just take my life experiences and apply them in a sense that is symbiotic with others. But this kind of like, you also need to have knowledge of what are the rules that are going on in the world, how you can help, which aspects you can bring into it, because knowledge at the end of the day will give you power, no matter what. For example, reading a book. When you read a book, you're holding a person's mind in your hand, so thereby you're allowing yourself to gain a better insight and use that insight with the wisdom of your own life and then expand. So they have to go hand in hand. You can't just be like, okay, I'm just gonna meditate for the rest of my life. I'm gonna get all the wisdom in life, and that's it. No, you also need to gain the knowledge, because it is how the wisdom is only for me, kind of like the vehicle which drives the knowledge. You still need the knowledge, you know. So it's important to differentiate both of them.
Well, yeah, I actually believe the Bible doesn't really make a differentiation between the two. For the Bible, knowledge and wisdom go hand in hand. So, for instance, there's this quite interesting passage in Exodus where basically Moses comes down from the mountain and he has the stone tablets with the law, with the 10 Commandments, which we all know, but then also 306. What was it? Was it 316? Or double the amount, something like that. Like a ton of laws actually that Moses has, but additionally he also has instructions from God how to make the tabernacle, which was the first version of the temple, and the person who gets tasked with making those items is called, or here in the Bible it says, this person was filled with the Spirit of God in wisdom, in understanding, in knowledge, and in kinds of craftsmanship. So it was wisdom in the Bible is not only how you go on with others, but also craftsmanship. It is the same idea behind it. It is the power to do to be able to do something is also wisdom.
And I mean, I think any wise person would be more open to learn something new. Because, I mean, if you're, for example, you believe you know everything in the universe and that there is nothing else you can learn, or you have no ability at all, then learning something new is going to be completely complicated. So, yeah, they do go hand in hand, but it's still something that, in practical terms, just like wisdom, you still have to work towards.
Absolutely.
And you can get kind of in a difficult stage where you might confuse both of them, or you might neglect one of them. So it's important to always, in a sense, test yourself. Not necessarily test yourself, but ask yourself, like, what else could I be learning? How could I apply this new wisdom or knowledge that I've gotten in life? So, but it's important to work on both.
Yeah, to elevate both of them. Thank you. And I found it very interesting what you said earlier, that it was the example that you mentioned, that I mentioned before, and that you applied on. And I find it a little bit funny because so it's not an example from the Bible. It was an ancient Jewish practice how they taught their children how to write, and the example how I learned it was actually kind of not necessarily opposite, but like basically when we're living in this world, like let's say as the Bible says, in the world of Satan, then we learn things in a certain way. Like we always repeat them, we have our patterns, we always do it in a certain way. But then when we Christians, so I think it was in the lecture about Romans or something at Bible school that we learned this, and then we Christians, we believe through the sacrifice of Jesus, we are now free to do as we want. But because we have followed those lines for so long, it is very easy to fall back into those patterns, and to, even though we don't have those restrictions anymore, to fall back into
kind of
those
like human
patterns.
nature.
But yeah, it is human nature, and we have to learn that through Jesus we have the freedom now to to follow God in our own way. And
I think what's interesting about that is I've been reading a book this past 2 weeks called Outwitting with the Devil by Napoleon Hill, and this guy was he was kind of like a self-development guy, So he just wrote books about self-development, and he also wrote a book called Think and Grow Richer. And essentially, he spent a lot of time interviewing around 50 really successful people and 200 not so successful people. And in this book, he got to a point in his life where, so he's been preaching all this stuff. He's about to get his books published, and then one of the publishers ends up dying or ends up being killed by some mafia and something. So they made him essentially. They call him. They're like the mafia thinks they have something to do with him. So they're like, you have to leave town or we're gonna kill you. So he goes into this like year-long kind of like retreat or something. Not retreat, but he's just hiding. He's very afraid, and in there he talks about how in our darkest moments we meet our other side. That other side being the part of you that wants you to succeed, the part of you that wants you to overcome your fears and just be kind of like the best version of yourself for society. But he goes into his mind, and I think what this author does very well is that he's able to, in a sense, imagine some type of interviews. So he starts, whether it's a real or imaginary discussion with the devil. So he starts having one discussion with the devil, and he's talking about like how is it that you take control of humankind. So he essentially talks about the devil being essentially the negative side of matter. And what's interesting about this is that this book was written in the 1930s. So when you're talking about the negative side of matter and things like that, it's kind of very advanced scientifically, considering that we didn't necessarily know that much back then. But with that being said, he talks about the devil is that side, and then God, or his opposition, as he would call it, would be the positive side. So the positive side, he said, that controls only 2% of the universe, and the devil controls 98% of the universe. And God essentially is just the natural laws that we have. So for example, the way that everything is created, gravity, and animals essentially act on the natural laws because they just follow their instincts. So with that being said, he goes on and is like, how is it that you control people? And he essentially says how it is through our habits, through our fears, through everything that has been kind of given to us and institutionalized, where people don't longer believe that they have the capability to think for themselves. So everything is just kind of given to them. And the devil says that his greatest enemies are the ones that are thinking for themselves, the ones that liberate themselves from the habits of, for example, not believing in yourself, or just not seeing yourself as worthy. And he gives very examples like flattery, for example, something that is one of his greatest tools for to, in a sense, get people into bad habits. Because once someone is flattered, if we receive that flattery as, oh, okay, I'm perfect, then we don't want to improve ourselves. So we're able to fall back into the loop. So same thing, fear, for example, fear being the number one tool that the so-called devil would use. And this fear is kind of like, it's given to us when we're little. We try to think for ourselves, we try to do things, and then everything is just fear after fear after fear. He essentially just talks about how the work of the devil is not necessarily done by the devil, but it's done by the humans itself. The humans that have fallen into the habit of thinking that the universe is essentially against them. And he gives a very good example about hell, for example, how that's how he controls children at the first stage, is by painting this picture of hell. And this picture of hell can freeze a person to death, especially children, to the point where all his decisions from there on are going to be fear-based instead of love-based. So it's just very, very interesting book. And, from my opinion and from what I've observed in my life, we have to be able to look at fear in a more, what I would say, loving way, because the fear is there to actually teach you something. Every fear is nothing else but an opportunity for growth. So we always have to think, like, why is it that I am afraid of this? What happened in my life that made me afraid of this? Because really, if we truly believe that God is good, God is great, and the universe is in our favor, there's nothing else to fear but our own thoughts and our own insecurities. So
Insecurities.
it's our own insecurities being portrayed. So we have to understand our insecurities. We have to understand our fears, and we have to move on from them, realizing that okay, they're there. It's okay. I believe that life is good. Whatever, there are things I can't control. Move on.
Mm-hmm.
But a very interesting book. I would really recommend it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really reminds me of a book that I read by C.S. Lewis. I don't know if you've ever heard of him as an author. He's the one who wrote Narnia.
Okay.
But like Narnia, I don't know if he actually has other fantasy books, but this is one of them. And then he also wrote many theology books. He was very, very smart person. One book that he wrote is called Screwtape Letters.
Okay.
Screwtape in his book is a demon.
Okay.
Who writes to his cousin or something like this, which is like a lower class demon or something. And Screwtape writes those letters to his cousin to advise him how to mislead this person that this other demon is tasked with.
Yep.
And it's a pretty, I don't know, I found it quite funny to read it. Although it deals with very real and very interesting topics, like mainly it was like how to. Well, one of the things that Screwtape says is when this man goes to church, like first of all he like blames his I think Wormwood is the is the name of the other demon. He blames Wormwood for like, why did you allow him to go to church in the first place? But well, okay, now he is going. So make sure that when he goes there, he sees all of the people who come, and he becomes judgmental because he knows, oh wait, that guy, I saw him like getting drunk last weekend.
Yeah.
And oh, I'm so much better. Like make him elevate himself, make him think higher of himself than others. And it's like filled with those small like
details
that when you go through life, you just start realizing, hey, wait, that's quite often that I fall into those traps. And that's what I found very nice in that book, just to that it mentioned and showed open or laid bare those things that can creep into our lives very easily.
In the book, the Odin with the Devil. Mm-hmm. So essentially, he talks about how, for example, when we would judge, for example, or fall into these habits, that would be so. The devil explains how there's two types of people. There's the drifters and the non-drifters. The drifters being those that follow to those habits that have been kind of given to them all the time, and they have no, in a sense, conscious realizations of kind of a. And I find this interesting because they go into detail into thoughts, for example, and just how this is something that I've experienced myself. If you sit with yourself in meditation, and you're just observing your thoughts without trying to grasp into them, you come to a realization that a lot of the thoughts that you have in a day are actually just an accumulation of the thoughts that you had yesterday, but also the thoughts that other people told you. So it's very easy for the mind to believe that a thought comes from you, but that's not necessarily true all the time. Because I don't know, at least sometimes when I've been meditating, I realize like something that a friend said, or a judgment that was said, or anything like that I know it didn't come from me, that I heard, but I was grasping into it, and then I created a story behind it, and then I would just get into that story and engage myself into that story, and then I was like, wait, what the fuck? Why am I doing this? Like, this is not worthy. Let go. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this comes from. If you would ask me this 2 years ago before I started meditating, I wouldn't have known. I wasn't mindful. I had no idea. So I can definitely see how many people can drift into those things, and it's very important as well to know which opinions and which opinions you actually listen to. Which, yeah, because people are always going to give their opinions. They're always going to talk, and that's completely fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to have a certain level of groundness to be able to say, okay, this opinion, I can respect it, but I don't want it to take over me. It's just something that, kind of like a car that passed by you. You're not going to sit there wanting to, like, oh my God, I wanted to listen to the car pass by again, or where did the car go? You're not wondering about it. No. Okay, there was a car. It passed. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be able to differentiate those things, I believe.
Yeah. And just one thing that I remembered right now that I wanted to comment on that you said earlier about the I think in the book you said that what was it, 2% is what God controls and 98% is what the devil controls.
Yep.
I would actually kind of say it's the opposite around, even though it oftentimes feels like the devil is actually controlling a lot. I believe the devil actually only has a very small part. But this very small part is like, it's taking truth and then putting a twist to the end. So it's actually not like straight out a lie, like straight out imagination, whatever. But it is like a very long way truth with a twist in the end that in the end turns it out into being false. And so it is longest way. It's God in control, but then oftentimes it's very difficult to find the devil in the system or in the statement. Then
I think, for example, here he talks about drifting and how, like, he essentially asks, what are the ways that you get people to drift? So go ahead and tell me more about the methods by which you cause people to drift. To hell with you. And he goes, I cause people to drift on every subject through which I can control independent thought and action. Take the subject of health, for example. I cause most people to eat too much food and the wrong sort of food. This leads to indigestion and destroys the power of accurate thought. If the public schools and the churches taught children more about proper eating, they would do my cause irreparable damage. Marriage. I cause men and women to drift into marriage without plan or purpose designed to convert the relationship into harmony. Here's one of my most effective methods of converting people into the habit of drifting. I cause married people to bicker and nag one another over money matters. I cause them to quarrel over the bringing up of their children. I engage them in unpleasant controversies over their intimate relationships and in disagreements over friends and social activities. I keep them so busy finding faults with one another that they never have time to do anything else long enough to break the habit of drifting. Occupation. I teach people to become drifters by causing them to drift out of school into the first job they can find with no definite aim or purpose except to make a living. Through this trick, I keep millions of people in fear of poverty all their life. Through this fear, I lead them slowly but surely onward until they reach the point beyond which no individual has ever broken the drifting of habit. Savings. I cause people to spend freely and to save sparingly or not at all until I take complete control over them through their fear of poverty. Environment, for example. I cause people to drift into inharmonious and unpleasant environments in the home, in the place of occupation, in their relationships with relatives and acquaintances, and to remain there until I clean them through the habit of drifting. And the most important, I would say, would be the dominating thoughts, which is I cause people to drift into the habit of thinking negative thoughts. This leads to negative acts and involves people in controversies and fills their minds with fears, thus paving the way for me to enter and control their minds. When I move in, I do so by appealing to people through negative thoughts, which they believe to be their own. I plant the seeds of negative thoughts in the minds of people through their pulpit, the newspaper, the moving picture, the radio, and all other popular methods of appeal of the mind. I cause people to allow me to do their thinking for them because they're too lazy and too indifferent to think for themselves. So, this one page explains so many of the problems that we go through home. And it really touches home with me. Because, for example, when it says occupation, I mean, for my own personal experience, I know that I didn't necessarily want to study computer science 100%, and it was out of security. Like, I study computer science, there's going to be security there. Like, no matter what, there's going to be jobs in the future that are going to allow me to live safely.
Yeah.
So there's many things that we go through that we don't necessarily acknowledge, and same with negative thoughts. It's a famous saying: what you reap, you sow. So thoughts turn into actions. Actions turn into habits. Habits, what is it? And essentially, habits turn into your character. So it's the same thing. You have to constantly be able to reshape your mind, reshape your thinking. So it's important to do that, I think.
Yeah. I just find it funny that you mentioned this famous saying, what you reap, what you sow, because it's a Bible verse. It's like so many of our sayings of what we go through nowadays, it's actually originates from the Bible, but many people are also not really aware of it, how much Christianity has actually shaped our society. And I mean, I see a lot of people nowadays say like, oh, Christianity is so outdated and boring.
No, I mean, wisdom is never going to be outdated.
No.
That's the thing. Wisdom is going to be applicable in every aspect of life. But the way I see how religion is going, at least nowadays, is that religion back then was, in a sense, proactive. It was able to generate new insights and things like that. But the way that our civilization is moving on right now, for me, it seems that religion is turning more into something that is reactive. So it's reacting to its environment, and it's shifting according to it. It's not necessarily providing new tools or new ways for people to live. Because, you can see the wisdom, but you really have to understand how to apply the wisdom and what the Bible says, or what any great teacher is trying to actually teach you into our current time. Because 2,000 years ago, the world was very different.
Yeah.
So it's important to learn how to apply it and translate it into, I guess, more modern language that would be more easy for people to read. Because
it's very true. And I mean, this is why, at least for me, I find it very important to go to church regularly, because I mean, the Bible has pretty old language and it's very difficult to understand. However, there are people who studied it, and hopefully those are the preachers and not just someone who thought, oh, I understand something of the Bible and goes to the front, prepares something. No, should be someone who studied it, who studied Old Greek, who studied Old Hebrew, to actually read, and also studied the cultures back then, because many of the passages are meant into certain, or are spoken into certain cultural backgrounds and everything. So that's what makes it very difficult to understand as well, oftentimes.
Oh, definitely. And, I think those books, the Bible, or, when you go to listen to any, what's it called? Like, for example, one of the really good Zen masters or philosophers that I keep mentioning is Alan Watts. And Alan Watts is, in my opinion, just the way that he talks, and he studied the Bible. He studied a lot of religions, and he speaks very in a more modern way, I would say, of what the Bible is actually trying to teach us. And when you listen to him, it just really resonates, and it's very calming, and I don't know, it's very peaceful. But I think it's still fundamental for us to not just neglect all those teachings just because of a belief that we have with a religion. Because, unfortunately, I think no matter what, when a religion is made, because I mean, I don't know if you would agree with me, but I don't think Buddha or I don't think Jesus wanted to create a religion. They just wanted to teach us a better way of living.
No.
And religion was something that was created by man. And unfortunately, man sometimes are very selfish, and they want to take advantage, and they create it into kind of like a business. So when people have something against religion, this is something that I've had. I don't necessarily have something against the teachings, but I have something against the institution of it. How they preach about helping people and being better for everyone, yet they have all these churches that are cost millions of dollars. They spend all this money in luxury planes and all this stupid non-crap, but they can actually be helping people. So it's kind of like a contradiction, and it gives me a negative view on religion. And that negative view on religion stops me from actually reading what is important. Because if the preachers, the ones that are actually supposed to live by the truth, are not living by the truth, it all, it has an effect on the view of people. So that's why I don't like to consider myself as any type of religion, even Buddhism. Like, no, I just want to listen to the teachings. I want to learn for myself and just work with it. Appreciate what they taught me. Appreciate the lessons, their sacrifices, and not look at what has been institutionalized or created by man after they left. Right. So that's just my view.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you in a very far away there, or I actually fully agree with you there as well. It's very important that we separate what is the true teaching of what is the original intended teaching and what is it that was created through culture. And I mean, this was what Martin Luther fought against 500 years ago, like just because it was like so corrupted what happened in the church and what was presented there, or at least and I hope I don't offend any of the Catholic listeners there, but I think that many things just came in history, and I mean it already happened just only a few years after Jesus died. The church started to come up with their own teachings, and people started to come and join the disciples with their own opinions that were not based on love, on the ancient scriptures, and on what God actually told them and the Spirit of God showed them. The thing is that so through my life I questioned the Bible a lot. Especially when I came to Bible school, I came there with a lot of questions. I came there and really so I'm more the type of student, I always sit in the front row, and I always sit like right in front of the teacher, and whenever I have a question, raise my hand and I ask. And that's kind of last weekend I was at Bible school again, and there was a teacher that I had 2 years ago, and he actually still remembered me, which I was quite surprised, because those teachers, they travel around the whole earth and teach at different Bible schools and have different ministries. That he actually still remembered me was quite surprising. But what he said was, like, I remember you had a lot of questions. And so for me, I did question the Bible a lot. But I also think that at a certain point, you have to get to a close and say, like, hey, wait, now I can trust it. Now I can say, like, I have questioned enough. Now let's see what are the implications. And I think actually the best way to question something is by actually living according to it. And to like see, okay, if I live like this, how far will it carry me? Where will I end up? Like, I mean, oftentimes we can also see experiences of others. Where has it led them? Where did they end up? And maybe we can even think a little bit by ourselves. But usually, oftentimes we don't see that far to see, like, to what end will this philosophy carry us.
No, I don't think it's possible to imagine. Because no matter what, and we can have an aim in life, but the journey that will get us to that goal it's foggy. We don't know what's gonna happen, so the only thing we have to do is trust. And I don't know, like I also question a lot of things, and for me, I think one of my biggest, what I would call, not step backs, but kind of like blockages that I've had with meditation is you get to a point where And this is something that was happening to me a year ago, where I was just meditating to a point where I felt like I was absolutely nowhere. What you would call like a void, just complete calmness. The the sense of self didn't didn't exist. It was no, there was no self. I was everything yet nothing. So it was very scary. And I talked to a monk actually when I was going through all of this, and he told me that meditation essentially builds upon itself. So you build your meditation practice, then for it to be completely shattered, and then you have to build it up again. So like there's different stages of what we call consciousness. So he told me like, okay, you go to the place where there's nothing, and you believe you're nothing, and everything is just kind of scary. Now you have to go to the practice again, but when you go into practice again, you're going with fear because you don't have trust, you don't have faith. So you have to be able to move past that. Once you move past that, he would call what would be called like nirvana or enlightenment, as he would describe it. And this is something that has been going on for like a year now. And so I get to this point where I'm meditating and I start feeling this overwhelming sensation of joy, of appreciation, of love, unconditional love for myself, for others, just for life in general. But as I start feeling that, there's the fears of kind of like previous experience of my life where I've trusted people or just things in general and they have hurted me. So it always feels like there's this battle of how much can you trust, because I believe that any type of wisdom or knowledge is given to those who the universe believe will use them in order for the betterment of humanity. So it's something that you have to be able to be humble yourself and say, I surrender. I become a vessel, not for me, but for the betterment of others. And it's a complete like jump of faith. So it's been very difficult for me to have gone through those things, and I'm still struggling with that. But I'm now trying to do it more practical. I'm like, okay, maybe I can't just meditate and just take the leap, but I can take little steps. I can take the teachings and I can live my life by them. And I think by living my life by them and seeing how much better I feel or the impact that I can have to others, then that would also give me the capability to have a stronger belief that I can actually achieve those things. Because I think one of the most difficult things about when you're in that point is, you have to be able to see yourself as a fundamental part of the universe and that you're actually capable of loving and being loved unconditionally. You have to be able to surrender yourself to that truth. If you don't believe you yourself are capable of loving, of being completely loved and just being that vessel, it doesn't matter what others tell you. It doesn't matter what happens in your life. It doesn't matter how many signs the universe gives you. You have to first believe it for yourself. So it's kind of the same with the Bible. You come to a point, you question it so much, you come to a conclusion that, okay, I have to just trust it. I have to just believe it and see where it takes me. And it kind of goes the same with the previous conversation we were having, where you have to let go of control of us trying to control others and all, to say, let's see what you can do. So allow people to actually have that space as well, because we also want that space within ourselves to be trusted, to feel like we actually can accomplish something, and that we're not constantly, trying to meet someone's expectation. But no, that person trusts that I can do this job. Okay, then if they trust I can do the job, and I trust that I can do it, we will do it. So it's kind of difficult, but I think that's where wisdom and things come from. It comes from trying something many times and failing at it until you learn the lesson from it. Like, I tried this, where I tried to ignore this. I tried to ignore this truth. I tried to ignore this part of me. I tried to ignore it, but it keeps knocking on the door. It keeps knocking on the door. It keeps knocking on the door. You have to enter the door sometime. You have to. And, I think I was having a discussion with a friend this weekend, and we were talking about depression, and he was telling me like, when you're depressed, your brain literally rewires itself, and we are able to see the brain of a depressed person and a non-depressed person. But something that I think it's fundamental for people to understand is that the brain has a capability to rewire itself. The brain can rewire itself. No matter who you are, that's something that the brain can do. So I was telling him, well, when you look at it, it's kind of like a habit, right? If you feed it the same thoughts, negative thoughts in your mind the whole time, your brain is just going to rewire itself, and you're going to focus upon that reality. So it might be a chemical thing, yes, but you still have power within those things.
Yeah.
And I think Jim Carrey described it very well. He said depression is your soul knocking at the door, trying to get you to understand something about yourself. That it's tired of playing that persona, that character that you've been playing, that is not true to your essence, but that you keep playing and keep playing and keep playing, and you keep ignoring the message. And from my personal experience, when I've been depressed and I've allowed the things that I've been blocking, the feelings, the emotions, everything that I don't want to see, once I let them go, and I would describe it like a scar. There's a scar. Once there's a little opening in the scar and everything starts flowing out, it will just rip apart. Rip right apart. And it will hurt. It will destroy your heart. It would feel like you're crumbling. But because you let all of that out, now you have space for new things to come in. So it's important once you get to the stage that the new things that you're bringing in are things made out of love, of appreciation for yourself, for others, for life. But it's not something that I think depression is something that we should just say, oh my God, it's impossible, I can't escape it, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. I don't think there's nothing wrong with any of us. It's just our own perspective of who we are. So we have to face those emotions, I think.
And I mean, in that sense also, I found it very nice how you said it, that you can experience this love and appreciation and unconditional love. And I think that's what God has for all of us. It is unconditional love. It is appreciation. I mean, God created us. It's in Psalm 139 where God says, I have woven you together in your mother's womb. I know every detail. I know every hair on your head. It's like we don't even know how many hairs we have. It's like, but God knows us so intimately, and He loves us so much that He wants to have us in His presence. He wants us to pursue Him and to be in community, in relationship with Him. And I think just tying it up to what you said earlier, neither the Bible nor, I don't know about Buddha, what probably he didn't want to, but definitely Jesus didn't want to create a religion. He wanted to create a relationship. And I think we already talked about this in earlier, but really what I see, what the Bible is, I mean, not every verse in the Bible, but the Bible as a whole is a love letter of how much God wants to be with us and what His way is to restore the relationship between Him and us. And the fundamental part in that is that God Himself, because He loves us so much, He did take on human form and died on the cross because of our sins, because of all the things that we did wrong. And I mean, it's not of all the hurt that we do to each other. It's not that like basically what sin is everything that stands in between you and someone else, or you and God. And I mean, so for me, something to stand between you and God, I think for you it's more something standing between you and yourself, kind of. So if you have a contempt with yourself, if you're not happy with yourself, I see it's more something where you don't accept how God sees you, because God sees us as his children, as his beloved kids.
I mean, I think it's like it's kind of like this thing where, for example, we believe that, you know, when we die, we're going to be judged by our sins. And, you know, God is forgiven. But something that I've always tried to say to people is, you know, it doesn't matter how much God forgives you. You have to be able to forgive yourself. I think it always comes back to your own view, because from my personal experience, you simply cannot love unconditionally others, and you cannot appreciate them if you first do not feel that appreciation from within yourself. And what I would call God, kind of like what we call the collective consciousness, God for me, it's the universe, and the universe is everything. And there's different levels of consciousness. And I think it's important to realize that there is that part of us, that fundamental good side of that wants the best for us, that wants us to love ourselves unconditionally, to know that we're appreciated, to know that we're worthy, to know that we are here to be prosperous, that we deserve abundance. It's something that is given to us. We just have to accept it. We have to accept those things. But
yeah, and that's one of the parts that I don't really understand, how you get to that conclusion, that it's actually fundamentally a part of ourselves. Why do you think that?
What do you mean?
That this part that loves us unconditionally and wants us to prosper, how do you get to the conclusion that it is like a part of ourselves, or that?
For me, the most difficult moments of my life, when I've surrendered, when I've cried myself completely down and I've talked to myself negatively for a while, then there comes a thought, or I wouldn't say a thought, but what I would describe as, you know, when you think, I don't know how you think, at least, but for me, sometimes I think visually, or sometimes I think with kind of like words, but the voice, the tone of kind of like the thoughts, when I've been broken down completely, I've heard this part of me, this part of me that is gentle, caring, loving, that wants the best not only for me, but for everyone. And that part that comes from within, that is around me, that's what I would call it, your other self, your higher self, that part of you that is your best version, that wants you to heal everything. So for me, you know, I don't want to see myself as outside of God, because I don't consider God to be something. I don't consider it to be a thing. The universe is intelligent by nature. There is an intelligence that goes all around us. There's things that operate in laws that we cannot fathom and comprehend as an individual, but we're still a part of. So we're all part of the universe. We're all part of God. And for me, God, or the universe, is an interpretation of everything. The Bible, music, all these things, the subconscious, are ways that, in my opinion, God tries to talk to us through. Because he doesn't necessarily talk through our messages, but it's through our poetry. Things that touch our souls and that allow us to see the love and great things that are all around us. So it's a communion that we constantly have, but that we're not very aware of. So,
and that's something I found interesting. Again, what you said in the beginning, you said inside ourselves and surround ourselves. I mean, that's exactly how the Bible describes God. I mean, the Bible makes clear that we are not God, that there is a separation, but God is within ourselves as well. There is the same sense of unity, also that we're all connected and everything. There's the same sense in the Bible as well. It's just a question, if this is really a fundamental part of ourselves, does this really describe reality as it is right now? I mean,
what?
It is clear that when we do something good, when we help each other, this will make our community a better place, a more prosperous place. We will support each other. But in general, like if we look at like what is happening in the world, this is not the way that we're headed as human society.
Well, here's the thing, and this is something that I like to see kind of like, if you step aside and you kind of compare how you work as a person and how the whole human race works,
right?
Something that I realize is like, we take our life is only 70 years, right? But humanity's life, the whole life of the human race, spans longer than that. Spans through generations, so it's something that is, in a sense, continuing, right? So the lessons are a little bit different. The way you would understand or gain wisdom, in a sense, as an individual, might be faster than as a whole, correct? So, in my life at least, the moments that have allowed me to love the most or become a better person have been the moments where I, in a sense, have destroyed myself. I've gotten to a point where I know I'm doing something detrimental to myself.
Yeah.
I keep doing it, and then something happens that is like, oh shit, stupid. Okay, realization. Boom. I move on. I grow. So the way I see humanity is kind of the same thing. We go through these patterns where we do something good, then we do something really bad, and then we do something bad. Then it hits the break like shit. Okay, we've been doing something bad. We need to do something good. So then from that, something better happens. And then something better happens, and then we do something bad again.
Yeah.
So we operate collectively in the same laws that we operate individually. But for us to gain wisdom as a collective, it takes a little bit longer because we all have to realize. So events have to happen.
Yeah.
So we see as, for example, war or things like that as being something so bad. Like, why would we do that? Might be something necessary for us to understand that this is not the way that we're meant to go. We have to get to a point where we're all tired. We're like, okay, this is not working. Hello, we're being stupid. Then we wake the fuck up and we start doing something. And I think the way that we're going right now is many of us are waking up to the realities of life. Many of us want to express and we want to make changes, but we do not have the confidence to make the changes ourselves. And this is something that I see a lot in our generation. The people that I talk to that are our age, they're pretty, in a sense, awoken. They can understand many of the social aspects and be like, yeah, this should be changed. But many of them actually lack the confidence to be able to do something about it. And, the way that millennials have been interpreting media and everything is like, we're lazy, we're all these things, we're not good, blah, blah, blah. Everything is our fault. Nothing is our fault. This is the world that we were given. Okay, we were given this world. We know something. We essentially grew up with the internet. We're able to communicate, so we're able to have a better understanding of different cultures. So that gives us more power than any generation previously. But we have to acknowledge the power that we have. We have to acknowledge the technologies that we have and use them in a productive manner. Change is not going to happen by the ones that have came before. No. It's simply not going to happen. They're stuck in the same old views. Look at President. He was President Trump. 70 years old. What the fuck? The world was completely different 70 years ago. But we still elected him because he feed on our fears. He feed on all these things. So we have to, as youth, as young individuals, we have to understand the future that we want to have is in our hands. It's not in the hands that had come before. Because somehow along the way, we have to understand that we actually might know better than the adults. That we might have some knowledge and some new insights that might be better than the ones that the adults have. We have to respect what they have given to us, but we have to say, hey, this is not the world that we want. This is not how we want it to keep going, and we have all the right to do that, just as they had the right to do the same things and create the same world that they've created up until now. But there has to be a point where we stand up and say, in a sense, fuck this. This is not the world that I want to live in. And that's the most difficult part, is for us to take that courage, to take that confidence and say, okay, we can do something collectively. Not the same way that it's been done before, but collectively. We can decentralize many things. We can create new technologies that allow us to create new forms of government. We have so much connection now. But let's use it wisely. That's what we need.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, as you said, technology and all of the things that we get, we don't throw them out.
No.
We do use, like, we keep in a lot of what we get. We don't just say, oh, fuck this shit.
No.
We're going to create everything. Let's let's bomb our cities and
No,
raise them up
no,
from
no,
zero.
no.
No, we are building on what our parents
Yes.
passed down. And this is what you meant with respecting what we get
Yes.
from our parents, from our past generations. But we improve it, we personalize, we apply it to our current situation. And
Exactly.
I mean, it is very true. A lot of the things that we have now, we have no idea where they will lead us. Like,
No.
we have no, in a sense, we really don't have any long-term experience with the internet.
No, and
It's something so new. Like, we have no guidelines. We have
No, no, no.
nothing. It's a new... And there was this quote that Angela Merkel said a few years ago, and it was a super huge thing in Germany. Everyone was making fun of it. But basically she said, internet is new territory. Internet is Neuland. Everyone was making fun of it because it's like, yeah, no, we have internet now, and we know how to use the internet. Maybe in your generation that's new land, but
no.
really?
We don't know how to use the internet.
No.
Because we have the greatest tool to connect, to truly connect, yet we're not connecting. So we
No.
don't know how to use them.
No.
We don't know the impacts that it can have into the way that we control governments. Anything can have actually so many implications. And besides the internet, now artificial intelligence is coming.
Yeah.
So now we have a new territory, and the abundance of knowledge that we have nowadays. You can learn anything. So even the way that schools work have to, in a sense, be shifted, because we can learn everything in a matter of seconds now.
Yeah.
You can look up anything in life.
Yeah.
So the future, I truly believe we're in a point where the future will be decided by how we live as a whole. Because something that I have always told people is, we always try to create, well, for example, we're trying to create general artificial intelligence that is able to solve our problems and is able to tell us all these things. And then there's the fear of, well, what if it rebels against us, you know? Something that I've always told people is, okay, imagine a higher being that is more intelligent than any human being alive. How is a higher consciousness or a higher intelligence supposed to respect us if we ourselves do not respect each other? So we have to fundamentally change the way we view one another as a whole, as humanity. I'm talking about, you know, racism, all these things. There are things that we have to get to the root of, and we have to scoop them out, because they're not going to work in a globalized, united world. Because that's literally all we're pushing forward. Everything we push forward is for us to unite. No matter what, all of us to unite. But we overcomplicate everything because we want power. You cannot have power in unity. I'm sorry, but it is impossible. Unity is about trust. It's about making and understanding what's the best, not for one individual, not for one country, not for one continent, but for the whole world. And that's something that we need to view, because the things that we're doing, the technologies that we're using, we're doing horrible things to the planet. We're doing horrible things to our mental health. And if we keep ignoring these things, it's a ticking bomb. And you can't ignore them anymore. We simply can't. We have to adapt, and we have to make a change, take a leap, trust each other, understand each other, and see what others can actually do.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where, like, again, I see where I see the importance of religion, because really, religion, I mean, yes, it has caused a lot of harm throughout history. It has caused a lot of separation and everything, but more than anything, it has united us. I mean, if you look at how many wars religions have caused, and how many wars so-called atheists have caused,
But I mean, I think any war is caused by some type of religion. Like conflict is religion. Like, for example, when you look at World War II, it was communism against capitalism. Two views on what we should live life by, conflicting with each other. So, for me, any type of belief system that tells you, like, this is how you should ideally live life, is in essence a religion. So, I don't think that religion has to be something like, we have to believe in something supernatural or things like that. It's just a set of beliefs and a way of living life, of communing and connecting with one another. So,
and that's really the two-edged the two-edged swordness of religion.
Yep.
It is that at the same time that it gives us unity, because really you cannot have a community if you don't have a common goal, if you don't have a common even value system. I mean, if you have different value systems in a system, there will be conflict.
Yeah, of course.
But then again, at the same time, you don't want to just make everyone the same. You don't want to have uniformity. What you want is university. And university actually is a union of the word union and diversity. So these two words together, I mean, that is what our universities should be. It should be a collection of diverse people learning together, having a common goal.
Yep.
And I think this is really what we should strive towards in our world. And
And I think most of us are looking for that. Like the majority of us, I think, this is at least from my personal view, a lot of depression and mental health orders or anxiety or things like that come from a lack of purpose, a lack of goal. So many of us want to help, we want to do something, but we simply do not know how or where. Somehow we believe that everything is invented, that we can't innovate new things, so it's very difficult for us to get out of those things and being like, okay, what can I do? Because it's complicated. It's difficult to actually allow yourself to, believe that you're capable of having an impact in your society. So,
and I mean, it's also very difficult to imagine to have a purpose if you don't believe in a purpose giver.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's again coming back to the topic that we discussed about last time. That's one of the great tragedies of atheism. Like, a generation.
Everything is random. That nothing. That you have no control over everything, and life just happens. Then there's no purpose.
No.
And and here's the thing about life. This is something that I would tell atheism. Is like, okay, whether there's a purpose or not, when you die, would you rather die living a purpose or without a purpose? Because it doesn't matter how you we're never going to know as an individual. For example, the experience of birth and death. There are experiences that you will never go through. You simply will never go through.
Yeah.
So what you do in between, that's your purpose. That's what you create. You're not going to know what happens afterwards. You're not going to know what happened before. So live your life with purpose.
Yeah.
Just fuck it. If it's a random game, it'll be a random game. But make something out of the random game. Give good to the people. Do something for others. Not just allow it like, oh, well, fuck it. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah. And I mean, really what many people, or what the church has gotten wrong or portrayed wrong for a very long time is this idea of, the Bible is all about, after your death, you either come into heaven or to hell. That's really, like, it is a small portion of the Bible. It is in the Bible that it talks about afterlife. But really what the Bible is about is what you do right here, right now, and about your life here. And it is really about creating heaven in your surrounding. It is about living a life according to the rules that we get, according to the morals that God has instructed and that God has placed here. Because if we live according to them, the promise of the Bible is that life will become better in the long run.
I think something that's interesting is I heard this story of there was a woman that had a near-death experience, and she was in a car accident or something, and then his friend is telling this story because he was like, I met this friend and known her for forever. She was an atheist. She didn't believe in anything, and she had that near-death experience, and then I think after 3 weeks or something, I asked her, like, okay, like, what did you go through? How was it? And all these things. And she explains how the weirdest thing that's happened, that anything she believes that can happen, or just things that she thought about and, like, essentially came true. She attracted a lot of things in her life. So whatever she would ask for, like, just ask and work towards, they would happen. So she was like, okay, so kind of like heaven. And then she goes, well, what if this is heaven? We just don't know. So what would heaven be? Heaven would be a place where anything you want to have essentially would be yours. What is hell? Hell is a place where you completely suffer. Well, what is earth? Isn't it a place in between? Anything you work towards, anything that you put your mind into, you can achieve. And anything bad that you do, you will pay for it. So I see earth as kind of like the middle ground between those. You can make your life a living hell, or you can make your life the greatest story and the most beautiful thing ever. Whichever life you live depends on your actions, depends on how you treat others, depends on how you view yourself. So we always have a choice on the type of life and the type of reality we want to create collectively here on earth. Whatever happens after, it'll happen. Don't focus too much. Focus on what you can do here. So,
Good. And I think we could wrap it up here.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah. So thank you all for listening. And have a good day.
We'll see you next week.